From people getting terminated off of Roblox to creating the largest game of all time, today we will be looking at how these players went from nothing and made 1 trillion Robux. But to find out how they got so successful, we need to look up these stories one by one, starting with Preston. Preston joined Roblox back in 2011 under the username SilverSwordGold2, and like most new players, he started small, just making games for fun. His earliest projects were simple sword fighting arenas and RPGs, but there was always a spark of creativity from Preston, and one of his first games he ever created was a game called Limited Tycoon, and for the first time, Preston showed he knew how to design gameplay, and over 2012 and 2013, he kept learning and kept experimenting, and by 2014, his skills had leveled up enough to catch the Roblox community's attention. He launched Guest Defense and even made a sequel, but neither exploded in popularity. That is, until he dropped Giant Survival, a classic survival game where you survive as long as you possibly can while taking down massive monsters. And it was Preston's first real hit, pulling in over 40 million visits, which was huge for the time. But between 2015 and 2017, the magic started to fade for Preston, as he tried new ideas like King Clash, Gears Online, and Fortress, but none of them found the same success. Still, those failures became lessons for Preston, as it was able to help him refine his skills and sharpen his ideas. And in 2018, Preston made a big move by officially founding his own Roblox development group called Big Games. But Preston was aiming to build bigger projects under this new studio banner, which helped Preston focus and turn a game concept that would soon take over Roblox. A game about collecting pets and coins doesn't sound too revolutionary, but on launch day, it pulled 50,000 concurrent players, which for 2018 was astronomical. It became one of the most popular games of the year, winning a Bloxy Award for Mobile Game of the Year in 2019, and turned Big Games into a recognizable studio. And like most popular developers, he wanted to make another sequel, which is why he would release Pet Simulator 2, but sadly, players weren't as impressed as they were with the original. Updates were slow, interest was starting to drop, and Preston needed to pivot. That pivot came in the form of Big Paintball, which went up to 1.7 billion visits and won another Bloxy Award. And Preston proved that by creating games outside of his niche, he could still dominate despite everything, which is why he would come up with My Restaurant. In 2020, it proved to Preston that he could branch out and still dominate. It drew in hundreds of millions of visits, but deep down, he wanted redemption from Pet Simulator 2, and he wanted to make another Pet Simulator game to prove that that niche is his thing. And the result was Pet Simulator X, which became the most successful game in the Pet Simulator series, and arguably Preston's greatest ever game. The response was massive. On launch day, over 90,000 players were playing Pet Simulator X at the same time, and as time went on, Pet Simulator X only grew bigger. And in 2023, Pet Simulator X would reach an all-time concurrent player record for themselves, as they got over 1 million people to play at one singular time, which was one of the highest peaks in Roblox history back then. And Pet Simulator X was able to amass over tens of billions of visits and was on top of everything. But he wanted to start fresh, and rather than resting on the success of Pet Simulator X, Preston continued to push forward with new projects and sequels, which is why in late 2023, Big Games would unveil Pet Simulator 99, the next chapter of the Pet Sim franchise. The game did incredibly well, even if it didn't quite reach the stratosphere that Pet Simulator X got. It still ended up doing incredible, and within the first year and a half, Pet Sim 99 would accumulate over 2 billion visits and maintain tens of thousands of active players. It solidified that the Pet Simulator brand remained extremely popular on Roblox. In fact, with over 2 billion plays, Pet Simulator 99 still ranks among the top 100 most visited games on Roblox, and Preston had successfully kept the series alive. And engaging for new and older players, he wanted to release even more games related to their series, which is why he would release Pets Go, which was an RNG game and kind of traced back to his original roots with his first ever couple games. But in 2025, Preston would shock everyone, as he decided to step down from Big Game Studios, which surprised a lot of people as he was already doing incredible on the platform, but he made his decision final and handed over the active development and management to his team, but remains as the founder and owner in the background, which kinda is a good way to end his story. But imagine starting off with nothing and making it to the masses, as this next story is one of the craziest stories I've ever seen on Roblox. Jandel was just your average Roblox player, and back when Roblox was still using old textures and was a much smaller community, Jandel was fascinated with the fun and goofy culture of Roblox and would play Roblox for some time, but unfortunately, he would quit. See, early Roblox wasn't as easy to enjoy as it is now. I'm not saying the old games were bad, but they were a bit worse to play, and for a while, Jandel would spend his time in other games like Minecraft and League of Legends. But years later, something would pull him back. By then, Jandel had quietly been learning the art of game development. His earliest creations were small passion projects, nothing groundbreaking, but they taught him the fundamentals of scripting, building, and design, and he learned it all through trial and error. And over the years, he would progressively get better and better. But in 2017, everything changed. During this period, Jandel was just living his life, casually sitting at a coffee shop, when out of nowhere, he got a message from a friend saying,
"Hey, want to come to my party?"
Yeah, sure, okay.
Okay, it wasn't really like that. But basically, Jandel attended a friend's party, which ended up having some very talented developers. And during this party, Jandel and some of his friends decided that they should make their own studio, which is now known as Splitting Point, which in the future would be the most crucial decision he would ever make on Roblox. As when 2017 rolled around, Jandel was still by himself in terms of making games, and he would release games of his own like Bed Wars and It Clown, as these games were very solid for its time, and the games would rack up millions of visits, which for Jandel was huge because it went from being 100% passion to wait, there's a chance I can make a career out of this. 2018 was solid for Roblox, and it saw developers like Jandel start creating more games, and that's when Jandel finally decided to take his group seriously. Jandel would start creating groups like Bad Skeleton, which would pump out a few FPS games, with the first one being a game called Fray. But he would also make games outside of FPS games, as he would start working on a new game called BattleBots, and things were starting to look up for Jandel. But 2019 would be one of the craziest years for Jandel, as he would create so many games that I could probably make another video explaining every single one of them. But to summarize the best I can, he would make Splitting Point his main focus, and he would pump out dozens of games with each of them having very similar amounts of success, which was sensational for not just Jandel, but the entire team surrounding Splitting Point, as this was a step in the right direction for them, and they were now starting to see results. And most developers would no longer make games for passion and cash out, but Jandel was not like most people, as he would end up having more passion than ever, as he would create a game, which ended up being infamous, as he would collab with the biggest Roblox YouTuber at the time, Flamingo, to create a game called Survive Albert, which ended up doing incredibly well and further helped Jandel's popularity, and things would only get better. 2020 would be the biggest year for Jandel's resume, as Jandel's true breakthrough came during the pandemic, as he and his team would create Field Trip Z, a story game about a high school field trip which turns into a zombie apocalypse. Field Trip Z drew tens of thousands of concurrent players and even saw more than 45 million unique players in 2020 alone, as Jandel would push updates every single week at the height of the game's popularity, and with the relentless content schedule, it kept players coming back and demonstrated Jandel's work ethic, which helped Splitting Point get nominated for Creator of the Year at the 8th Annual Bloxy Awards. And by 2021, Jandel had transformed his strategy when it came to development. As with Field Trip Z's revenue, he would start to use a familiar strategy for Roblox game development, as he would start reinvesting his money into other Roblox games. And the first two tests for him was his co-creation of Wacky Wizards, which was designed as an open-ended social sandbox for players, and it was a game about combining ingredients to brew crazy potions, and it ended up becoming one of the more popular games of 2021. But to keep the momentum, Jandel committed to weekly content updates for Wacky Wizards, and for over a year, he would add new potions, ingredients, and events every single week, including premium ingredients that boosted the game's monetization, which for Roblox was an easy way to push out his game. And these frequent updates kept players coming back and would be one of Jandel's greatest accomplishments of 2021. But with new fame and lots of money, Jandel began acquiring existing Roblox games to expand his empire. His Roblox group, Jandel Games, purchased popular titles such as Rage Runner, as well as a trivia game called Deadly Decisions, ensuring that his influence was spread across multiple genres, which undoubtedly helped Jandel grow his empire to over 25 games during this period, and helped him earn millions. But by 2022, Jandel was already recognized as a big Roblox developer, but he wanted to go even bigger. Notably, he and his team developed Rolling Thunder, a squad-based shooter game in 2022, as part of Roblox's Game Fund program. And with Rolling Thunder, it pushed the boundaries of technology on Roblox, which helped them earn a nomination for Best Use of Tech, which showed that Jandel was trying to advance what was possible on Roblox, which was huge because most developers weren't going this length to make something great. And by the end of 2022, Jandel had amassed an unbelievable resume, multiple Bloxy awards, multiple nominations of Bloxy awards, billions of visits across his games, and an unbelievable amount of wealth. Jandel truly made it as a Roblox dev. But in 2023 and 2024, things would ramp up. Although Jandel was still purchasing more games to put under his groups, he didn't heavily focus on just buying games and seeing what happens. He wanted to focus on pushing his games to their fullest potential, as games like Steep Steps and A Dusty Trip became some of the most popular Roblox games of all time. And what he and Splitting Point did across the 7 years they've been around is very special. But little did they know that 2025 would be their year, as they would end up creating history on Roblox. As Jandel was just looking on Roblox when he saw a game that looked very interesting, as he saw a game called Grow a Garden, and he thought this game had unbelievable amounts of potential to go viral. So like he has done for many years, he contacted the creator of the game at the time, Lux, and bought it off of him to have creative control over the game. And with Lux accepting the offer, Jandel and his team got to work. And what happened in the span of a few months is honestly the most insane thing I have ever seen in my entire career making these kinds of videos.
Grow a Garden has one of the craziest success stories in the history of gaming.
Grow a Garden's player count was climbing to unsustainable levels.
They broke the record for the most concurrent players at once.
This has never been done before in the history of Roblox.
Me showing that montage is honestly not even worth the amount of popularity and hype this game received. It managed to peak at nearly 22 million concurrent players. What? To put that in perspective, a Roblox wiki noted it's roughly equivalent to the entire population of Taiwan logged in at one single time to play Grow a Garden. It broke every record in the book, but the most impressive thing was the all-time concurrent player record, because the previous record for most concurrent players was 3 million by Bloxfruits. This game broke that by nearly 10x. I mean, that is just so unbelievable. Like, it shouldn't even be possible, but it happened. And Grow a Garden rocketed to the 5th most visited game on Roblox, and it's undoubtedly going to be the most visited game on Roblox. But as much as he succeeded, there is another dev who is hands down the richest Roblox player of all time, which is why we need to talk about Doobig. Doobig has been creating Roblox games for many years, and before using the Doobig account, he had an earlier name called Tremedy, and under that old account, he developed a game called Adopt and Raise in 2014. However, the Tremedy account was later terminated in 2017, which gave him early experience and gave him a taste of game development on Roblox. And even though it ended abruptly, he took a little break up until the pandemic, where Tremedy will return to Roblox under a new name called Doobig, and he officially founded a company called Doobig Games, which was later rebranded as Doobig Studios. And right away, he started creating his own games. His first Roblox game as Doobig was Hospital Life, and its launch marketed the start of his journey. A few months later, he launched Speedrun Simulator, as these games helped establish Doobig's presence on the platform, and Speedrun Simulator in particular was successful enough that he eventually sold it to another studio. But by the end of 2020, Doobig had proven himself as both a game creator and an emerging studio owner. And Doobig, realizing that, he decided to make games that would help other developers. which was a genius strategy for Doobig's team. And instead of making his own stuff, why not just help others? And Doobig finally got his first major deals in 2021 and 2022, when Doobig quietly acquired a popular experience called Clicker Simulator. Doobig Studio took over the development and marketed the game to help it grow even more. And after some time, once again, Doobig would sell the game to another studio, and the game eventually went to private. But this pattern of finding a promising game, improving it, and sometimes passing it on became the Doobig business strategy, which was genius at the time because no one did it. And by 2023, Doobig Studios was growing at an unbelievable pace. They started having some of the best high-profile game acquisitions of the year, as they would acquire Race Clicker, Sword Fighter Simulator, and the incredible game Blade Ball. These games were already hits on the platform, some of them having tens of thousands of players, but bringing them under Doobig Studio helped them reach even more players, specifically Blade Ball, as the game would end up having over 5 billion visits in 2025. But back then, it became the biggest game on Roblox, and they monetized the hell out of it. But Doobig had already started moving on to other games, and in 2024, they would continue expanding their portfolio by partnering in other games, as their most infamous game became Bish, a serene fishing and exploration game that had quickly become the most popular game on Roblox in 2024. Bish was officially acquired by Doobig Studios, and unlike most of their deals, they were able to take over creative control, and Doobig monetized it so much to the point where Fish unfortunately went from being the biggest game on Roblox to now under nothing. And another title that Doobig would pick up in 2024 was A Dusty Trip, which ironically was from Jandel, who also bought stake in the game, as Doobig would help the game reach over 1 billion visits, and they would even acquire Baddies, which is another game that obviously went viral. But in 2025, everything would change. Doobig would expand their empire to games that had more potential, and just like Jandel, Doobig wanted to use that strategy to their advantage, which is why they would acquire Steel of Brain Rot in partnership with a developer named Spider Sammy. This game went viral. The game became almost as big as Grow a Garden, and the level of monetization this game had was unbelievable. And in mid-2025, Doobig officially took the reins as the richest Roblox player of all time. But as much as these people dominated the Roblox market and made so much money, there are more people just like them that have unbelievable stories that even I would love to know. So like and subscribe if you want more videos like this, and until then, I'm out. Peace.